So due to some technical difficulties this week, Film Friday is going to look a bit different. I knew that when I bought my GoPro and started filming in 4K that I was filming in a format my laptop couldn't handle. But online it showed me how to download a software called Handbrake and walked me through all the conversions to be able to reformat my videos in hopefully a format my computer could handle. So I tried that, but when I loaded them this week my computer still couldn't keep up. So I went back into Handbrake and tried to redo all my videos in an even lower quality, but still that just wasn't quite enough for this old laptop to be able to process. So I started down the path of looking up what I would need for a good video editing laptop. As I started to go down this rabbit hole, I thought, hey, maybe if I can't do my regular Film Friday this week, hopefully all the research I'm doing could make a good enough video to help someone else out too. So here we go. Join me as I walk through everything I've learned so far about what it takes to make a good video editing laptop on a budget. So the first step was to figure out what was needed for my GoPro videos to work, and I had to figure out what was Kaby Lake. So back to Google, where I discovered that I was looking for processors from 2016 onwards, mostly seemed to be 7th or 8th generation, and that number was right in the name, which was super helpful. Next was to look at some of the top recommendations and just get an idea of what were some of the other specs I had to get a handle on. I talked to my neighbor who does a lot of video editing for work and took lots of great notes, and even went into a few stores and talked to the sales reps there. And this is what I came up with. Number one was to look at the processor. I already knew that I was looking for 7th or 8th generation, but I had to also look at the cores. And so I discovered that not all 8th generations are the same, and some might have 6 cores versus 4 cores. And I had to start to decide price-wise and process-wise which was going to work best for me. Number 2 is looking at memory, so the RAM. All the recommendations I was getting was to get at least 16 gig, but to also think about future proofing, which meant being ready to upgrade later and having the option to have it go up to 32 when RAM prices came down. I also came across Optane memory, but later discovered that's more to support you if you have a regular hard drive instead of an SSD drive, which we'll talk about next.
The hard part.
Right, there has to be enough slots, or it has
exactly.
to be like
What'll probably happen is a lot of the ones that have 16 gigs probably only have 2 slots inside, and they're probably 2 8-gig sticks. So essentially you're limited to, if you want more, you have to buy 2 16-gig sticks.
Right, it's not like having a 116 that you just have to buy one more 116, yeah. So that would make it really expensive
or
to
having,
upgrade
Or having a motherboard that has 4 slots, but it's 2 8-gig sticks and then has
There's
2 more.
Two blanks.
You're probably running into two slots. That's pretty standard for computers.
Okay.
However, they decide.
So number 3 was looking at the drive and looking at solid state versus a traditional hard drive. Now the solid state drives can read and write so much faster than traditional hard drives, and they were the thing that was recommended by everyone that I spoke with. Of course they cost a fair bit more, which means getting a large one could be quite expensive, but for me I was really just looking for something that would keep my computer running fast and my video editing being fast, but I didn't mind storing most of my files on an external hard drive, so I don't really need anything that big, so I'm definitely going to be sticking with an SSD and hopefully being able to find something in that 512 gigabyte range. And of course, not all SSDs are made the same. When I was doing my research, I noticed some were called SATA and some were called PCIe, and so I had to look them up and compare them to each other. Of course, the PCIes are faster than the SATAs, but from everything I could read and from the people I'd talked to, for what I was doing with the video editing, it wasn't going to make a significant difference. Number 4 is the graphics card, and everything I'd heard is that I wanted to make sure I didn't get an integrated one. I wanted one that had its own RAM, and this is where the price really starts to jump. A lot of the research online was helping me compare them if I was doing gaming, but it took a little while and I finally found a site that looked at it from an Adobe perspective, and so I could actually start to see which brands were the best to be looking at. Number 5 is looking at the size, both looking at screen size, but also looking at the weight, especially for traveling. So obviously had to come and check out the sizes, check out the weight of some of them, and see. That one's nice and light, but it doesn't quite have the specs I'm looking for, but the sizing's good. And then these ones are huge, way too heavy. I can't even lift it into the screen. But yeah, you just can't really tell until you take a look at some of them what you might want. This says it's only 14-inch, but it looks the same size. What else? Yeah, these all say 15. This looks more like a 14. Oh, that's nice and lightweight. So number 6 is looking at all the ports and ways of connecting. And so I know I have a lot of devices that are USB-A, but now with the new USB-C, and then trying to learn about, well, what about Thunderbolt and how do those compare? And so having to do a bit more research and thinking more about that future proofing. I don't actually have anything that needs either one of those ports yet, but I did learn that though both are the same shape and will plug in, the Thunderbolt is of course much faster, and so if I have a Thunderbolt device trying to plug into a regular USB-C, it's not going to function. But a USB-C plugged into a Thunderbolt will. So this one's still a question to figure out. I definitely need some Type-C plugs for sure to be future-proof. It's whether or not I need them to be Thunderbolt speed. And number 7 for me was definitely looking at battery life. Being someone who travels a lot and knowing that you don't always have great power, I definitely need something that's going to last all day. So in conclusion, my video editing laptop checklist includes getting an 8th gen i7 minimum 4 cores processor, 16 gig of RAM but the ability to expand later to 32, a 512 gigabyte SSD drive, a graphics card with at least 2 gig of its own RAM, trying to keep it under 2 kilograms, screen size I'm not too bothered, and I want my ports to definitely have a Type A USB, a Type-C, maybe with Thunderbolt, HDMI, and battery life definitely has to run for a minimum of 8 hours. And so I'm sure you're wondering, after looking at all these specs, what computer am I going to get? Well, that's where it gets a little tricky. One of my favorites right now is MSI's new Prestige line, sitting in a really nice price range with all the minimums that I'm looking for, around 15 to 1600 Canadian. But of course, they're all on back order right now all across Canada, so I can't get my hands on one of those till the end of the month. Another one that's a really top runner for me is Dell's XPS 15, a little more future-proof, got a few more higher end specs in it, and it's sitting closer to that 2200-2300 Canadian, but I also can't get one of those shipped until the end of the month as well. And I'm always keeping my eye on MacBook Pros, definitely in a much higher price point. The specs don't quite line up the same with Mac, but they function a lot better the way they've been put together. They don't necessarily need the same amount of RAM or the same graphics cards to function. So I guess you'll just have to stay tuned. Hopefully in a few weeks' time I'll be doing an unboxing and you'll get to see which one I picked, and I'll be able to tell you how it goes with that. If you're enjoying these videos and you found this helpful, definitely click the subscribe button below and definitely click on that little bell icon so that you get notified of more videos, and we'll see you next week. Bye!